of one man who persuaded his friends to watch every Godzilla movie ever made. This world is on the brink of destruction. We need you now, Godzillavangelists! Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, produced and hosted by Ryan Sargent, featuring Sam Schlenker and Joanna Brodecki. Sam, Joanna, there was something very important about the American version I forgot to talk to you guys about last time, which is the identity of the editor, like the person who re-edited it for American audiences. A very interesting person. Do you care to venture any guesses?
As to who re-edited it?
Yeah.
Was it Walter Murch?
No, but you're not that far off.
Oh no, it was.
I'm just gonna go for it though. This, the American version of King Kong vs. Godzilla was one of the first editing projects of Peter Zinner, who went on to edit The Godfather Part 2, The Deer Hunter, The Officer and a Gentleman.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
What?
I know. It's absolutely insane.
I think it's safe to say he peaked with Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have just stopped there.
He was like, oh, this will pay my rent for show. Let's go.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a book where they attempted to interview him, and all they could get from him on the phone, on the record, was like, I don't know why you want to talk to me about this piece of crap. He was not very happy to be for people to remember that about him. But so we have an esteemed Academy Award nominated crew member associated with King Kong vs. Godzilla now.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, good for that guy. He really,
It's funny you say that, because I was actually going to say that I think I overall like the Japanese version better.
Uh-huh.
So, it's good to know that someone so talented and important in film history made this movie worse.
Yeah.
Well, I will say the editing was pretty alright, but before we get into that, welcome to Godzillavangelists, everybody. This is our part 2 of King Kong vs. Godzilla. This week, we're leaning into the Japanese version, the original version.
Woo!
We're stepping away from nostalgia and getting to the very bizarre reality of what this movie was originally. I think we got a little impression from Sam there, but what did you guys basically think of this version of the movie?
I preferred it just because it was much sillier, but it was like kind of aware of what it was doing,
Yeah, I think the very beginning, right off the bat, it makes it clear that this is a comedy. And,
yes.
And that I kind of liked, because, the American one, it kind of opens, it's sort of like, oh yeah, this is another one of these. It's kind of, we have our news anchor talking about the events, but this is like, get ready. We're opening this with a joke. You're in for a silly movie. There were some parts I thought were actually better than the American, but overall, I liked it.
Yeah, and the flow of it was better, I thought.
That's true. It does seem to have... Well, for one thing, you can follow the characters.
Yes.
In the American version, people just kind of show up and do things, with the exception of Dr. Taka, who is amazing no matter what version of the movie
right.
you watch.
But trimmed down quite a bit in the U.S. version.
There's less Dr. Taka, for sure.
I read somewhere like they trimmed him down because American audiences like thought he was way too absurd and not believable.
Really?
I was like, but that's why he's so lovable.
Exactly. I guess they didn't really respond to the idea of it being a comedy, because the comedic aspects are really Japanese.
Yes.
But I feel like they could have translated it, but that was probably too much to hope for in the 60s.
Americans were still busy learning that Japanese people were people, and then it's that they figure out that they're funny. But the first step is just like, oh, these are people on the other side of the globe. I don't give our country in the past any credit.
I'm now remembering in Godzilla Raids Again the terrible American narration where they called Japan a little nation of people.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Who were setting on a happy course.
I looked at the moon in the sky, and you see a shot of the sun.
Listen to the Godzilla Raids Again episode. Anyway, as you pointed out, yeah, the movie starts totally different. Instead of like a weird Shakespeare quote that goes into like a boring UN newsroom scene, we have this kind of bizarre science show where they're talking about the world coming to a halt. And then you zoom out and then you see, Taco watching the show and being bored out of his mind.
And he is like bored to the level of agitation that I reach sometimes when I'm in traffic for like over an hour. Like his explosiveness is a rare thing.
He's on a whole other level. Like, if we're talking about Airplane, where everyone else is playing the movie deadpan, and then Johnny, that one, like, super fey air traffic controller, is the only one who knows it's a comedy. Like, Dr. Taco is on the level of Johnny.
Right, but in Airplane, nobody is saying that Johnny's going to kill himself. Constantly. 'Cause that's
right.
That's the weird thing to me, is when, that was something that was not in the American version, is the people commenting on how strange Dr. Taco is. And yet they let him go on an expedition with a bunch of guns to go find a monster, which seems a little topical, because he has a lot of access to weapons and people to carry out his schemes when people genuinely think he's a danger to himself and others.
It's very true. I've mentioned before how the writer for this movie and many of the movies we have watched and will watch, Shinichi Sekizawa, was part of the Communist Party of Japan. You can definitely see a very biting critique of capitalist ventures and the power they have, and it's all for television and advertisements, which is essentially worthless. There's definitely an agenda with this movie, even if it's in the background.
Right.
It brought up a question that I hadn't had before, but it's an interesting thought experiment, which is there's a level of what you see when you say media coverage of Godzilla, and the idea of I immediately started wondering, and I think there's a line where they mention something about making Godzilla into a movie or something, and it made me wonder what the movie about Godzilla in the world of the Godzilla movies would be like. Because it's very real for them. Right. And it's an interesting thought experiment, because I wonder if they would use something else to symbolize Godzilla. They were attacked by Godzilla, but then they make kind of like a parable where Japan is attacked by a giant bomb. No, I don't. But I don't know. It was a weird thing that this movie, by exploring the media coverage of Godzilla, brought up in my brain, and
I was glad to hear again that it didn't have to. I felt like I said this before, but I felt like every film we were restarting at what is this monster? And I was glad at this time at least we were like, all right, we know Godzilla, and then his only concern wasn't what if he destroys Tokyo? He was like, God fucking damn it, he's gonna take over all the papers, my dumb show is gonna lose all its ratings. Love that is his primary concern.
Yeah, just to make it totally clear for those of you who didn't watch the movie, there's a very funny scene where after Godzilla comes out of the iceberg, he's finally freed after, however many years being trapped in there by those fishing pilots. And
fish pilots.
All of Dr. Taco's staff bring him newspapers and magazines and stuff about Godzilla, and he goes nuts over it. He's just tearing them up and why won't people stop talking about Godzilla? Why won't they talk about my monster?
His tearing up of the newspapers is A+ scenery chewing. He's so crazy.
And I know we kind of equated him to a Charlie Chaplin-esque, but the more I was thinking about this film since we watched it, I was I could see Matthew McConaughey doing a good crazy Dr. Taco in any kind of new. I was just trying to think what actor would play that insane role.
Oh man.
What's funny is I could see a Samuel L. Jackson even
totally
being comparable to Dr. Taco.
Yeah.
Only, you would actually be scared when Samuel L. Jackson got mad. But it's that same kind of intensity. It's he's gone too far.
Yeah.
But you don't dare say anything to him about that.
Crispin Glover.
He could do it. He could do it for sure. So yeah, we got a little bit ahead of things, but the plot of the movie is essentially the same, even though it feels totally different. It more or less plays out the same, but especially in this early part, you get to see a lot more scenes with the characters like Sakurai and Furu, who work for Dr. Tako. They are like cameramen for the TV division of Pacific Pharmaceuticals, but they also have like ambitions of being on camera, I guess.
Also, wait, yeah, that drum scene, that was not in the American version, right?
No.
That was great.
So yeah, we meet Sakurai in a scene where he's wearing a Scotch tape packaging colored jacket and playing the drum.
His jacket is like representative. It reminds me of the Music Man. Like he's about to like get up and sing about 76 trombones.
That really is what he's wearing. So yeah, he finishes drumming and he meets up with Furu, who's like, I want to get ahead in this company. And Taco is meeting with this doctor who went to this island and saw like monsters and magic drugs and stuff, and we should go explore it. And so yeah, they meet up with Taco in the first scene that actually made it to the American version. That's like 10 minutes in the movie. We had the first scene that we actually saw in the other movie. And yeah, that part more or less plays out the same. So Sakurai and Furu agree to go on this expedition, but we have an idea of why they wanted to.
I also like too, in this beginning, I feel like they had a little bit longer when they were like with his sister and the sister's boyfriend. That scene was a little longer and she got in a few more lines other than like, I made you steak. Like she was actually, throwing some sarcasm in there. And I was like, all right, I see you, original version.
It also helped me figure out that, and this is something I didn't realize watching the American version, that Sakurai and Furu and her boyfriend are not just two people. Because this prompted me to ask, because you never see all three in the same room. You see any combination of two. And it really threw me for a loop because, yeah, I was like, wait a second, one of them isn't on the island all of a sudden. It was the brother who never went. And then I got you, Japanese version. There are three of them.
You're still mixed up because it's the boyfriend who never went.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah. The boyfriend, brother. Sometimes they're the same.
You weren't the only one. It was Joanna too, and I'm totally going to throw you guys under the bus for being racist. But
no,
we'll move past that.
It's not just racism. It's also that I think that everyone who has almost identical haircuts looks the same because they often dressed and also had similar haircuts enough, and they're roughly the same height. Just as far as I know. I'm just digging myself in a deeper hole. I understand.
I was going to say, in looking back, I did look back, and it seemed like they cut some of the scenes, cut a little bit around the descriptors of some of those side characters. But yeah, the Japanese version definitely helped with that.
Yeah, and as you were saying, they all get to live a little more, especially Famiko, who is like the main female character. She gets to live a little bit more. She's very sassy, especially to her brother. We get even a scene just with her and Akiko Wakabayashi's character just alone, having girl talk.
Wasn't that when they were deciding to leave the city or not?
No, that was when she was like worried and she brought her food so she wouldn't worry. It was a strange scene, not a great scene, but it told us something about the characters. But yeah, so they go on the expedition, and one of the big differences is that the whole scene of the submarine coming across the iceberg and being destroyed by Godzilla is cut up into several segments over the course of like 25 minutes in the Japanese version, as opposed to taking place all at once in the American one, which I feel like is one of the weaknesses, one of the things that the American movie did better. That scene works so much better when it's all together and like chopped down a little bit so it's nice and tight and you feel the tension building. Yeah. And also, the American actors in this scene are terrible.
Okay, so this is the thing I feel most passionate about in this movie. Where do they find these people, these actors? Because it's like they're American actors who specialize in playing Americans in Japanese movies, because they are horrible actors. Is it that they just look really American? Like,
yeah, it's that they're white. That's all that
where
matters.
do you find them?
They just look like the captain of a ship.
Where do I sign up to be someone who only plays Americans in other languages so I can get away with being just horrible?
So some of them actually did show up quite a bit in the future. Like the one doctor with the mustache, he's in a bunch of Godzilla movies as like the white doctor. And I think they were just like people working in jobs who happened to live in Japan and they wanted to act on the side.
Interesting.
But I actually think that a number of the people in this scene are like, they must have been from a real American like naval base, because they have like crazy accents. Like one of them has a real like Tennessee, Virginia accent. He's like, Captain. That, just like a real.
So is that the way to get my SAG card? Just move abroad and like hope that they need.
Yeah, just walk around being like, I'm blonde.
Yeah, like hello.
I'm blonde.
Some of them sounded like they had actual marbles in their mouths during the scene. Like, was that? Because maybe I might be dissecting this a little bit too much, but like, is it that they sound extra American to a non-English speaker? Because like they look great. They look like Americans. And but yeah. I mean, boy.
Corn-fed.
I mean, the captain in particular is grotesquely unfit for the role. Like, he has a very high-pitched, whiny voice that even cracks at a couple points.
Full speed ahead!
Who's the one with the very low voice who's like, hello? Or was that in the redubbing?
Yeah, they dubbed him to have like a very, very good captain voice.
Oh.
But in reality, he's like, what? I think that's exactly how he says the word
Classic.
what.
Is there a chronology to these? Like, does Godzilla actually, in each one, like, age and learn from his past mistakes?
Yes, believe it or not, at least up to a point.
Like, in dog years, like, how old is Godzilla in human years at this point?
I feel like Godzilla is thousands of years old, if not millions.
In human years, but, well, I don't know. So he's like maybe 27 at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In which movie is he Jesus age? 33.
I would say this is Jesus' point, because this is his resurrection.
Oh.
He came back from the iceberg.
Does he not resurrect every time?
I feel like this is the only real resurrection.
Okay, I haven't seen the
Up to
rest
this
of them,
point.
so I can't speak to that. So I'm glad that you can enlighten me, so to say.
But after he breaks out, we have the great scene where he attacks the Arctic base, the scene that made me fall in love with Godzilla. And then a brief scene with Akihito Hirata's character, who is almost like a parody of the characters he has been playing in these movies, because he's very almost sassy in the Japanese version. Like, he's very flippant to the reporters as the movie goes on, the questions he's asking them. But at least in this first talk with him, he's fairly serious. And he has an interesting thought about Godzilla always returning to Japan, like always coming to the place he was born. And I guess this is their excuse for forever onwards, for Godzilla only ever attacking Japan.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of tender in its own way. Precious. Like, he's
It
going
really is.
home to destroy it, but home.
Yeah, this is his hometown. Love it or hate it, he's going to stay there.
Sounds like a John Mellencamp song.
I would love a John Mellencamp Godzilla song.
I just watched Harry Potter 7 Part 1 the other night.
Amazing.
And it's so good. I hadn't seen it since the theater and I'd forgotten everything. It's very good. But there's a part where they're kind of like, I think that they want to go visit Harry's like parents' home, Godric's Hollow, right? And they're like, we're going to go there. And they're like you shouldn't go there because Voldemort probably is going to want to return there for sentimental reasons. And then he's like, yes, but that's why I want to go there, is for sentimental reasons. And it's kind of like that. It's like kind of returning. Everyone knows everyone's going to go back there because it's Japan.
Guys, next extension of our podcast, we read the book and we do like a book movie club review of all the Harry Potter ones. 8 episode miniseries version.
Every episode we think about, what if Godzilla was in this one? How would it change?
Who is Godzilla? Snape? Who is?
No, I think Godzilla has to be Harry Potter. We have to envision him as the protagonist.
Oh, that's interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
So Mothra's Hermione.
Question 1. How is he going to fit in the cupboard under the stairs?
It's a really big cupboard.
The cupboard is actually larger, magnitudes of size larger than the entire house.
That's right.
Ron is for sure sometimes Dr. Taco. That kid makes the best facial expressions. But anyways, I digress.
The iceberg that he escapes from in this, is this like his coming out party from the cupboard?
Yeah.
All right.
Cupboard coming out party.
So he's about to go to Hogwarts in this movie, and then we find out that that King Kong, aka Draco Malfoy, stands in his way.
Yes. It's perfect. And the helicopters are owls. There's always helicopters flying around this movie.
Draco Malfoy is way more feisty than King Kong. King Kong is way tired for this. King Kong is like a haggard old... Well, he can't be Dumbledore, but he's just so tired.
like he does a read. He's like, "Are you scared, Potter?" And they're like, "All right, listen, King Kong. Too much energy. Take it. You know, you just had a bunch of drug juice. Are you scared, Potter?"
Yeah, that's him.
This is the best podcast ever. Is anyone still listening?
I doubt it. I've got someone at gunpoint listening to it now. Speaking of minutia, what's up with that little cartoon man that Taco has in the back of his office? It's very loud and ostentatious, and he's wearing like a Wario shirt.
Yeah.
I want to know if that's a real character.
He's kind of like Bob's Big Boy.
He is a little bit. He looks sad as hell, though. He's frowning the whole time. Maybe that's the metaphor for Taco's like crippling bipolar disorder. That's the looming sadness that we don't see when the manicness.
You're saying that he's like a picture of Dorian Gray situation?
Yeah.
Whereas he gets crazier and more like over the top. The Bob's Big Boy gets sadder and more kind of subdued.
Exactly. Yeah, there's lots of scenes that we didn't get to see in the American version that are in Taco's office. And I find all of them like very funny and have a lot of ahead of their time meta references. Like there's, as you pointed out, there's a scene where somebody's like, they're even making a Godzilla movie. And they're talking about who would win in a fight, King Kong versus Godzilla. And he's like, there's an idea there. There's something there. If I can just figure it out.
It's so meta.
Yeah, and I like they really played into... I feel like throughout the film, they weren't just like scared of King Kong and Godzilla, but there were some times they were really placing bets on them, you know? Like, it was really getting into the gambling fun realm of it.
But that unsettled me a lot, too. I liked it, but like, it was a little weird, like, when the kid, you know, there's like a kid who's like, "I want to see Godzilla!" And like, the mom's like, "No, don't." And then like, that Godzilla's destroying so much and like killing so many people, and everyone's just like,
it's true.
Like nerding out over a monster fight, and it's like,
I feel like in Batman v Superman, you know, a film I'm not #1 fan of, but they at least, you know, recognize that. In this one, they're just like,
oh man, yeah, it's a little unsettling. It's especially if you realize that it hasn't been that many years since the original Godzilla.
Original, yeah, I was just gonna say, wow, what a difference.
It's true. I think that we're starting to see, not to read too much into it, but we're seeing like a social desire to move beyond like feeling like you're under the boot of America and having sort of like a fun, productive society. Like Japan's, I think that it's called the quote unquote economic miracle, is just kicking in, where they started their culture of like overwork and the salarymen who would work all day and go to the bars and never see their kids. And, you know, this was like a movie for them. Like they would watch this movie instead of bonding with their children.
My brother, when he worked in Japan, he's like, "I do drink a lot." It's exhausting. He would text me sometimes. I'm like, "What time is it?" He's like, "I missed the 4 a.m. train, so I'm waiting for the 6 a.m. one to come in so I could go home."
Oh my God.
Wow. It's
the birth of a very different culture, and I think there's weirdly a somberness to it, or at least a darkness, especially with Dr. Taco. I feel like he's supposed to be like a parody of like the boss that everyone thought they had at the time.
Yeah.
Just like this
crazy, over the top,
manic nutso.
Yeah.
There's even a scene on Fair Island where Furu has like heat stroke, and Sakurai is like,
"Keep going."
Well, Furu is like, "Oh, we gotta go home. Like, I feel terrible." And Sakurai's like, "We're gonna be fired if we don't bring something back for Taco."
Yeah.
And Furu says, "We really need new jobs." And then later he like even threatens Taco at gunpoint and has like the most obvious line of the movie where he's like, advertisements, you're like ruining all these people's lives for advertisements.
Preach.
So he interestingly has the closest thing to an arc in this movie, because he starts out like wanting to appease the boss and like pushing for them to go on this expedition, and then ends up like totally rebuking Taco
and holding him at gunpoint.
Yeah.
Can I ask, are we going to go in depth on the island part? Because I have a question towards the end of it.
The island part is probably the closest of anything in this movie, so I don't know how deep we're going to get.
Yeah.
So if you have something to say about the island, let's jump in.
Well, first of all, nice TBT on the island, remembering them giving the cigarette to the kid.
Yes.
Love that flashback. But also my main question is, how did they convince the islanders, I might have brought this up last time, but I can't remember, to let them take Godzilla? Like, because that must have been a whole...
King Kong, you mean?
Oh, right. Because that must have been a whole process, you know? And he was passed out. They need, like, what did they do to let them take away this thing that saves them from giant squids? Or octopuses?
That's a very good unanswered question, because, you know, he's on a big raft, so someone had to help him cut down and move all those huge
I imagine
trees.
it was like a
That's
multi-day process, yeah.
Right. That's like a labor of hundreds of people. So... that's a big question mark for sure. There's
no answer.
All right, natives, let me cut you a deal. We give you cigarettes and the art of the radio, and you give us your god.
And work for free doing backbreaking labor, building a giant raft.
I thought you'd have some, like, well, I read somewhere in the something of the internet, but good to know that, nope, just storytelling, thought, let's just skip over this one. Get on with it.
That's a big plot hole. A much more niche one, but equally as important, is why does Godzilla not use his atomic breath on the electric barrier that keeps him out? Because he did that in the very first movie when they tried the same plan.
He must have forgotten while he was asleep, and then it's like my dog, when I was growing up, if we put his like little treat on an air vent, freaked out, lost his mind, couldn't pick it up. No clue how to deal with it.
Yeah, Godzilla's he's degrading a little bit. He's a little bit frozen in that ice.
Yeah.
Another funny Taco scene, which I believe was your guys' favorite based on your reaction, was when he meets them on the ship, and that scene's significantly extended, where he's talking about, like, well, now that we've got Kong, we'll just take him on a press junket and, like, you know, do a bunch of spots, and Furu and Sakurai are like, what? Like, are you insane? Do you think this is something we can do? And he's literally, like, blowing kisses to King Kong.
Yes, I was just going to ask, at what point in the film was he blowing kisses to King Kong? Because, yeah, that was the best moment. Best improv I've seen on screen in a while. And
then, you know, people from Japan show up and they're like, look, we consider King Kong smuggled goods, and if you bring him to Japan, you're responsible for all damages he causes. And, of course, Kong does escape. So... therefore, Taco owes the government, like, trillions of yen.
Yeah, that point is also never resolved.
They talk about smuggling Godzilla over as if you're, like, driving into Portland or into Oregon with an apple. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, well, hey, I mean, just so you know, can't be crossing the border with that giant ape. Because, you know, it's
That's never been seen before.
Yeah. What you got there? Some sort of weird apple?
Yeah. Please fill out this custom sheet first.
Weird, mangy, hairy, lumpy apple.
Oh, and then they blow him up. Oh, so sad every time. I'd be pissed too. I'd be so pissed. If I was sleeping at home, next thing I know, I'm in the ocean and bombs are exploding under me.
Yep, that's a bad day. And you
Does he stand in the ocean at that point, or is he swimming? Very minor technical point.
He's swimming.
Oh, he's swimming. Okay.
Because he's like 150 feet tall.
I mean, I know he's not tall enough for the depths of the ocean. I wasn't sure if they were closer to shore at this point.
I see. I guess they're close enough for him to go to Japan, so I don't know. He could be standing. But anyway, most of the characters agree with you, because in the Japanese version, there's like a weird vibe that King Kong is not as bad as Godzilla.
Yeah.
From a lot of characters.
First of all, not a weird vibe, a valid vibe at parts. Gentle giant.
Well, I'd like you to defend that.
Because he hasn't hurt anyone yet. They've only seen him like hurt giant octopuses.
I feel like they deliberately make King Kong extremely, like, empathetic. Or we feel a lot of empathy toward him. Because he's just...
so cute.
He's just having a bad day.
So, like, sad old dog.
He woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and that was the high point of the day.
Right, you know, getting to beat up an octopus and chuck a few cold ones back. That's tolerable. It's only downhill from there.
Also, wait, quick side question. I know they kind of bring up the drugs, but like Taco never really talks about that as something to exploit as well, which like could have easily been his side biz undercover this like TV network,
Right. He's not interested in that at all, which is really funny and I think intentional.
Yeah, I mean, as savvy of a businessman as he is, but
right. He has the opportunity here to have like the ultimate painkiller. It works really well and it's non-addictive. But instead he's just hung up on the whole King Kong.
Are you sure it's non-addictive?
No, they state.
They claim it is.
Have you seen King Kong? It's like those people who are like, the thing about weed is it's non-addictive. But then like you look at them and you're like, you sure about that?
Right. You're like, definitely not always, but like.
It's crazy how you've become just a smaller human version of King Kong, but you say that.
Yep. It's funny that, we made the dumb joke a couple of times about when they bust the juice bombs above Kong's head. He's basically vaping.
No, yeah,
that's
he's
literally
totally
what's happening.
100%.
Before vape pens, that's what you had to do. You had to do it that way. Have a really whimsical army fire juice bombs at you.
Those are better days, weren't they?
It's to your point about Japan kind of moving on, like to not having, not feeling like they're under the thumb of America. The whimsical army is delightful. Like the army who all of their methods are firing juice and tying balloons to the enemy. Right,
which I love that young Ryan was just like, yes, that is the only option. Let's get those balloons.
It's a brilliant idea. As with the plan of putting Godzilla in the giant...
I was just going to say, let's spend millions and trillions of dollars and get them to fight. And let's bet on it. Like, amazing.
Which is not that different. Spoiler alert for the new American version. The ending of that movie is essentially the same as this one, where a guy is like, make them fight. That's the end of the new American movie. So it hasn't changed. As the movie goes on, it becomes more similar to the American version because there's more monster action, less character development stuff, and gag scenes. But we do get some extra bits in the first skirmish between Kong and Godzilla, where Taco and his crew, they're not initially allowed to pass the military roadblock. So they sneak around like covered in branches, and of course they immediately get caught.
Oh, I forgot. That was amazing.
And the army guy who catches them is like, whatever, just like, you're more trouble than you're worth. Just go over there and shut up. It's a very funny addition to that scene. So yeah, basically as the movie goes on, there's more and more characters like betting on who's going to win. Sometimes literally. And we get scenes where, like, Akihito Harada's character, people are asking him who they think he's going to win. And he's like, that's a stupid question. Why are you talking to me about this? Or a scene where Taco almost gets into a street fight with somebody over who's going to win. They're talking about how Godzilla's better. And they're literally about to exchange blows. That's honestly maybe my favorite line in the Japanese version, when Sakurai shows up and like breaks up the fight, and he says to Dr. Taco, let's watch King Kong now, like he's talking to a child.
Yeah,
like distracting like a little boy, like saying like, hey, don't worry about that, let's watch the parade.
Every adult is a child in this movie.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, basically it's just like overall snarkier, more ironic, has a different feel to it. Like at the party where Sakurai and Furu are getting sent off, Sakurai says like, how are we qualified for this? This makes no sense. And that's sort of the vibe through the whole thing, is like,
we shouldn't be doing this, but here we are.
Yeah. Are any of these people... Why should any of these people be dealing with monsters? Even the general, there's like a very subtle joke with him when he first appears, when somebody says, Godzilla was sighted here. And he's like, well, I'm going to need approval from the minister, so now just send some military school students to observe, because I might have to face responsibility for actually taking action if I decide to do something without minister approval. So it's like very critical of a lot of institutions that were forming in Japan, it feels like. But yeah, eventually we get to the end, which is more or less the same.
I love that Sam was like, was the fight longer? And it was basically the same exact fight at the end. But just watching it twice was probably like, this is a long fight.
It surprised me because I remembered it being, it's like I remembered the beats of it, kind of. But it's a long fight. I mean, it's definitely, it
is a long fight, yeah.
They're selling this movie on the promise that Kong and Godzilla will fight. And then they spend a lot of time just showing why King Kong doesn't want to. And he's just, they've just dragged him from his home. But then they fight, and it's long. It has a lot of like acts to it.
Yeah, a lot of beats.
Yeah.
I didn't remember it being that long, and I was like, did they extend this? I think no though. I definitely forgot how many times Godzilla would just kind of knock King Kong out, and then just kind of throw some dirt on him.
Ton of tail whipping.
Which was one of the two observations I had for this scene, which is, I pointed out to you guys, I didn't say this last time, that as a kid, my family, our grill was this little charcoal grill, just like the tiny ones you would set up on legs outside. And I remembered having to like sit out there and wait for the charcoal to heat up with my dad. And so as a kid, when I saw Godzilla knocking all the rocks around King Kong, sort of burying him in the rocks and then lighting the trees around him on fire, I saw him as like, preparing him for a nice grill. Like laying down the charcoal,
grilling him up,
heating up,
dinner time,
putting the flame not on King Kong directly, but around him, so he gets a nice even char.
I thought you were going to say, while I was waiting with my dad, when he ran inside, I'd pour the charcoal out and start kicking it around. I was like, that was not outside the realm of possibility for what you were going to say.
I was frightened to know where that story would go, because the more you tell us
Fairly
about
tame.
little Ryan, the more I'm terrified.
Yeah. Fairly tame by comparison to what it could have been.
Did you ever then kind of like reenact that on your charcoal grill and put like a dinosaur chicken nugget there?
Yeah.
I guess I don't think there were ever King Kong chicken nuggets, so you had to go the next best thing.
Gorilla-shaped chicken nuggets, maybe.
People don't eat gorilla-shaped anything, and probably for good reason.
Did they have Godzilla mac and cheese at least? They had so many shapes. Kraft did.
They did not, tragically.
You should have written the letter.
Would you eat it?
I would eat it, sure.
I have a terrible confession, which is that I have a really hard time eating things that are shaped like living things. I'm not even kidding. Like gingerbread men.
Really?
I have a really hard time with, because I just empathize with them. I'm not. This is not a joke. I'm not trying. And I also trying to like make you think I'm a good person.
Sam, the rule is like with gummies too. You eat the head first, so you know it's not in
see
pain.
that
If you
like
have that
makes me
peso,
really sad.
Just bite the head first.
Makes me really sad. And when I was a little kid,
what about like SpongeBob mac and cheese? Because the shaped mac and cheese is for sure better.
I wasn't allowed to eat fun things when I was young. I had like whole wheat tortillas with like a piece of asparagus in them.
That is sad.
When I was like 3, so when I was really young, I loved Barney the Dinosaur. And so my family got me a Barney the Dinosaur piñata, and then I was the first to get to hit him, and I cried because I didn't want to hit him.
Wow, such a pacifist.
And then they said, it's okay, you don't need to. And then I watched all my friends just wail on Barney.
That's so funny. Does that extend to things that retain their shape when they're cooked? Like if you go to a Japanese restaurant, would you ever eat baby octopus? Or do you have the same?
You know what's funny is I tend to like if I ever have octopus or like calamari or anything, it's like I tend to prefer it if it doesn't look like the shape of the thing, but you just have little pieces. But no, it's not like, I don't think it's quite the same. Maybe it is. Maybe you just...
Interesting that it's harder when it's literally just fake and made out of flour and sugar. Than when it's a real animal.
Yeah.
I tell you what I did do as a kid to play Godzilla, though. We had... for a long time, our backyard was under renovation, so there are always giant piles of dirt around. And we haven't seen any of these scenes yet, or maybe we have, but I don't think so. But there's a lot of scenes in these movies where monsters, appear out of a mountain or like burst from the ground. And so I would do that a lot when I would play Godzilla. I'd put my toys in the dirt and like tie a wire around them or something, and then I would push them out like they were...
That is very innovative of you.
Emerging. But anyway, the other observation, quote unquote, that I had during the scene was right when King Kong was like on the ropes about to be killed and the lightning storm showed up. Right at that moment, right when King Kong could have used some juice, Joanna's laptop said, "Almost out of power. Please plug in." I was very amused by that.
And it was that could have been part of the movie. Yeah, it was like a little moment where the computer was telling us that King Kong his battery was nearly drained.
In case you're wondering, yes, I did time it like that. So you're welcome.
But like King Kong is on low power mode the whole movie.
Whole movie.
Like he starts out at 13%. And
he's like if he were a video game and you have 3 lives, he's on 1 or less the whole time.
Oh yeah. He's like 1.5 link hearts out of 14.
Thank you. I was specifically thinking of Link, so I'm glad that you...
I don't know how many of you are going to get this 30 Rock reference. I know you will, Sam, because you're a huge nerd for it, as am I. But
yep,
it kind of reminds me of the episode where Jack decides to push Pete to his limit to see if he will break and become...
Oh my god, Pete is such a good analogy for King Kong. Oh my god,
yeah.
That is him.
It is a little bit. You're right. Like this is King Kong with his shaved head and a broken nose,
kind of balding.
Right. When King Kong finally gets the electricity and finally like really gets energetic and fights back against Godzilla, that's when Pete has his head shaved and he becomes furious. To loop back, there was a popular myth for a long time, because the Japanese version was so unavailable and still is, but even more so in a pre-digital world. In the Japanese version, Godzilla would win the fight. It's not true, as you guys saw. It's a little more ambiguous in that they talk about Godzilla and we hear his roar, but no, King Kong still wins the fight, essentially. And that brings King Kong versus Godzilla to an end.
I have a quick note on the end of this Japanese version, though, and that is, I wasn't a fan of the kind of ham-fisted moral message at the end where someone says, basically like King Kong goes away and someone's like, what's the moral of the story? And he goes, well, I'd say it's that we need to stop exploiting plants and animals, which is like, this whole movie was exploiting animals and plants. And I don't know, it felt a little like the whole point of the movie was to watch these two giant monsters fight and to eat some hallucinogenic berries. And then I don't know, and didn't buy it.
I thought it was funny that they were just like, this film, as we said, was a little more sarcastic, a little bit funnier, and then at the end they just like, slap on this message, which we were saying was potentially ahead of its time, speaking to the environment and such. But I was like, is Leonardo DiCaprio like executive producing this thing? Just at the end, like, hey, also check this out. All right, I'm out.
Well, any more thoughts on the movie itself?
I would just say, if you're going to watch one version, I would try to pick the Japanese version. And I think you can find it around online. My vote would be for the Japanese over the American, if you can only pick one.
It's a marginal victory, I think, because I like that it knows it's a comedy. And the way it opens. But then from there on out, I mean, it's kind of, I find the differences not to be that huge, and the American one a little tighter in parts. So it's, if you can get a hold of it, but I wouldn't like say it's not the same as the first movie where they are entirely different movies.
I think it's a very different feel, but you're right, they play out more or less the same. I don't know. There's a difference, but definitely go for the Japanese one if you can. So guys, when we were watching this, you guys pointed out that the movie would sometimes radically change quality, and there appeared to be like weird like wipe zooms, like pieces of film had been sloppily fused together. So there was a reason for that. Toho, in 1969, like a lot of Japanese movie studios were like desperate, and they were throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. Because 1969 was sort of like American movie business in 1959, where it was like falling apart. Everyone was going to TV. The bottom was falling out. So I needed to like find some way to make their money. And so they started doing something called the Champion Matsuri, or the Champion Festival. And that ran from 1969 to 1978. And it was essentially like on Japanese school holidays, because of the way their economy worked, a lot of kids would just like roam the streets and just like have money in their pockets and have nothing to do. And so Toho billed the Champion Festival as like the movie theater babysitter. Like, bring your kids into here and you can go to work for a few hours and we'll show them like a bunch of cartoons and movies in a row. And as like the center of it, because he was their most popular character, they had a new Godzilla movie every year as part of the Champion Festival. And because they were keeping this in mind, because it was making so much money for them, they would make them like very appealing to kids, and they could only run a certain length. You know, they had to keep things in mind when they made the Godzilla movies starting at that time. But they had the Champion Festival twice a year most of the time it ran. So during the other one, they had to take an older Godzilla movie and recut it to fit into the Champion Festival sort of format. And so King Kong vs. Godzilla was the very first one they did this to, and they didn't take good enough care of the trims. They actually cut the original negative of King Kong vs. Godzilla to make the Champion Festival version. So the pieces that they cut out are, heavily degraded, and they've progressively found like better quality versions over time. But for a long time, all they had was like 16 millimeter like copies of it. So that's why it looks like crap, because
so when they were putting it back in,
yeah, they had to sort of like do the best they could, because basically all that's left of the original negative is the parts that would appeal to screaming impatient kids.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Damn, when did you learn that?
I've learned many things about Toho.
Ask me about my Godzilla knowledge.
But yeah, it ran till 1978, and every single year except 76 and 78, they had a Godzilla movie in it.
That's funny, because the movie's all like talking about advertising, and a big thing in advertising is like advertising to kids, and here they're like, well, we've got a great idea to make money though, so
yeah, I'm guessing they didn't cut out the part where they gave the cigarettes to children from the movie, because they're trying to sell cigarettes to children.
I don't know. I'd be very curious to see what the Champion Festival version of this movie looks like.
It's just that part. It's a 10-minute film.
It's just a loop. So my question to you guys is, how would you change the original 1954 Godzilla for the Champion Festival? Nothing off limits. You have a limited budget to shoot new scenes if you have to. Because, guess what? They never recut that one. But if you guys had to do it, if you had to put...
For kids?
Yeah, the original somber
Gojira.
Yeah, you had to cut it down to about an hour long and make it so the kids wouldn't like wreck the theater when it was showing. You had to make it so the kids are captivated the whole time.
So you wouldn't have to do very much to it, but I think you just need to take the redub and kind of like add some information that basically it's not that Godzilla has radioactive breath, but it's that he just hasn't brushed his teeth very well. Because he's been he's been dormant for so many years where he's a mouth breather. So like there's just plaque and cavities. It's awful. So it's all a like brushing your teeth, mouth hygiene PSA. And then the end, I think, would be that, basically it's like, yeah, and everyone, you'd have to reshoot some of the scenes where people are dying, and it would have to be like, people just like, no, so your breath's terrible, and running away, and then like there could be a part where like the mother and the children are huddled about to die, except they're not about to die in this version, and she could be like, we'll be with daddy soon, and then he breathes on them, and they're just like, yeah, daddy had bad breath too. They meant like metaphorically, and then and then the end could be them going in with like a Tide packet of mouthwash to drop into Godzilla's mouth, but then he doesn't let them, and then he burps, and then that's what that thing is, and his own burp breath makes him a skeleton.
Kills himself.
It blows his skeleton out of his body.
And then so basically the end would just be like, brush your teeth, kids, and floss every day.
That's amazing. I applaud that approach entirely.
Mine might not be as strong, but first of all, I would just cut the line of "we're gonna go see Daddy soon." I would just cut that little part out, and then I would add in some reshoots with a character who's basically just there to call Serizawa out for being over dramatic. Just like, oh, come on, snap out of it, man. And just kind of a Dr. Taco type character that's there to make the kids laugh. And, you know, he's a very dramatic character. So he's kind of like that. And then I do some reshoots where Emiko's dad, what's his name? My favorite, the doctor?
Dr. Yamane.
Yeah. Where he would kind of talk directly to screen and be like, so, you know, kids, like he really would be teaching. And then at the end, Dr. Serizawa would be like cheered up by this comedic guy. Oh, and there would be a little ad in there similar to A Christmas Story where they're like, oh, why do you have an eye patch? And he's like, well, I lost it playing with fire, so I don't recommend doing that. You know, a little, just like a little side note.
So it's very educational, really.
It's not as amazing as Sam's rendition, but, you know.
I don't think mine was that amazing. I think yours is both educational.
I like it a lot. May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I'll Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. Serizawa has a girlfriend shoehorned in for him, so it's not sad that he's alone at the end. I'd like to get you guys' predictions for Mothra versus Godzilla, because I remember, Joanna, at least you were surprised at the idea of Mothra fighting Godzilla. You were a little unsure how it was going to go down, so I'm curious to hear what you guys think will happen between the two of them.
I thought they were friends. Are they not?
Oh, no way.
Nope, they're not.
All I'm saying is the next movie is called Mothra versus Godzilla.
Right.
It's a lover's quarrel.
As we said at the very beginning, very first episode.
It's going to be like John Tucker Must Die, where they kind of are in love, but then they're also kind of trying to destroy each other because they like each other, but they're very emotionally immature.
How does Mothra hurt people? Is it her wingspan? Like wind? It's wind, right?
I mean, that's how she was doing most of her wrecking in the last movie. A lot of winds blowing over cars and, you know, making buildings fall down.
Does she gain any other, or is it just the wind?
I will say there is one hidden ability that she busts out.
Listen, all I'm going to say is at the end of it, Mothra's going to bring out her two gal pals who sing, and it's going to have a similar effect to the song on King Kong, but they're going to work really well on Godzilla. That's how I foresee it ending. They're going to blast the little gal pal song. They're like, oh no, get the microphone, bring out the ladies.
So what you're saying is Godzilla will be won over by the power of music.
Absolutely. Like that ABBA song, Thank You for the Music. You know, they'll play that at the end.
All right, real quick. What's your Mothra versus Godzilla predictions?
I'm guessing the Peanuts aren't going to be in it this time. That's my guess. So I'm going to say that, yeah, Godzilla and Mothra meet up, and they're kind of fascinated and a little interested in each other, but then that first night doesn't go so well together, and then they go to destroy each other for the rest of the movie. But then maybe they end up falling in love.
Who doesn't text who back, though?
Oh.
Is it Godzilla who's not interested?
Godzilla's so emotionally distant. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
of course he doesn't text Mothra back.
He's been a loner his whole life. Mothra, like, has love in her heart, you know?
Well,
exactly.
Mothra,
she's very affectionate, very bright, very loyal.
Mothra then gets brunch with the Peanuts, and they're like, just, he's not worth your energy. Just don't. It's not worth it. And she's like, yeah, but, like, look at him. I think there's something deep down in there. And then they keep telling her, like, I told you so, because he never texts her back. But she thinks she got to the root of him.
He's like, I'm so sorry my phone was dead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, for 3 days.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, I laid dormant for 2 billion years.
I like it a lot. And if you care to venture your Mothra versus Godzilla rom-com ideas, you can always leave them in a nice comment or review. Whether you leave it on iTunes or YouTube or whatever platform you prefer. And actually, I have a comment. All right, I have 2 comments, actually, from Michael. He said, great content. I binged all the episodes available the other day.
Aw.
Yeah, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. That's real sweet. And then this one is from Andrew MV. He has in quotes, "Metalheads are just scary looking nerds." Totally accurate, and I will take that as a compliment. Thank you very much. First listen right now. Great so far. Can't wait to see what Sam and Joanna think of some of the sillier entries.
Oh my gosh, yay!
He looks like a scary looking nerd.
He is,
Yes.
but he's holding a cat, so that disarms it a little bit.
But can you reply to his comment and say, please, can you also vote Joanna Sam?
But yeah, let us know what you think, and we might read your comment on the next episode. But in the meantime, next episode... Actually, the next movie we're watching, as we said, is Mothra versus Godzilla. This is probably the most similar of the two versions between American and English so far, so it matters very little which one you watch. Go for either. And we'll see you next time to talk Mothra, and if my plan works out, we may even have a special musical guest, so look forward to that.
Woo!
Woo!
Bye!
Bye!
Bye, everybody. Hey, everybody, Ryan here. So as it turned out, Matt couldn't join us for this episode, as I'm sure you heard, but I did do a recording with him just a couple days ago, and it was a little big, so it's going to be its own mini-sode. If you really want to hear his thoughts, you should. It's pretty funny. So look for that in the near future. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you're looking forward to the next one. So here is me again with the closing credits. Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, is brought to you by me, Ryan Sargent, and my friends, Joanna Brodecki and Sam Schlenker. We'd like to thank our fabulous editor and mixer, Rachel Deering. All our incredible music is composed by Robert Mai, and our wonderful artwork is drawn by Cassidy Stone. Special thanks to our families, friends, and the wonderful artists who made the movies we talked about today. Godzillavangelists is a satirical, critical work, not affiliated or endorsed by Toho, Legendary Pictures, or anyone behind the Godzilla series. Visit our website at godzillavangelists.com. We're also on Twitter at GodzillaCast and Instagram at GodzillaVangelists. If you prefer to listen to us online, we have a YouTube channel, and the latest episode is always on SoundCloud too. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you join us next episode. In the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.